Travis Reier and Charlie Potter, the BamaOnline.com staff, with another edition of Instant Analysis. This one from outside Wednesday's practice at the University of Alabama, actually indoors at Coleman Coliseum. We've got the Alabama men's basketball team doing some work in there under the watchful eye of Avery Johnson. But for now, it's time to talk some football. Obviously, Charlie, coming off the bye week, big concerns about injuries coming out of the Tennessee game. We're midweek into LSU week. Your thoughts on kind of where this team is in terms of the three guys that seem to be the focal point of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Eddie Jackson seems to be good to go. You know, he's been going through everything during all the drills that we've seen. We haven't seen much of practice this week.
Right.
Only about 3 total periods, but Eddie Jackson seems like he's okay, and Saban insinuated that he would be all right. I think the guy that you need to be most concerned about is right tackle Dominic Jackson. You know, he obviously had a procedure done on his ankle, very much similar to what Cam Robinson did this time last year. And he's been going through drills and doing more and more each day, but still that's an injury that, you know, for a guy that's as big as he is, it's tough to put that amount of pressure and work against the front like LSU's in the game and actually be effective. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on. And I think Saban might have a little bit of an update of that later on today. And then Ronnie Harrison, you know, he's a guy too he's been back in drills and doing stuff. Yeah, I don't think his ankle injury is near as bad as what Dominic's is, but another guy to keep an eye on. He's not a starter, but obviously in Dom's situations, he's going to be in there and on special teams as well.
Yeah, I think that Jackson, as Saban said, looks great. I didn't notice a knee brace or anything. Looks to be moving around pretty well. I'm with you on Dom Jackson and also Ronnie Harrison. Gingerly, I guess, would be one way to describe it, but they're out there. So, yep. And there's still a few days. So maybe they can push through it here in the next 48 hours or so and be ready for the Tigers. But it does bring into question depth at those spots. At this point, I think you have to really think about Brandon Green as a step-in guy in this game for LSU, and a veteran guy that's played a couple different roles. You know, he may have to be the guy at right tackle.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen him work at right tackle throughout the week, and before that, he had been primarily at tight end. That's where we've seen him as an extra blocker to give them a boost in the run game. And I think that notion that he comes into situations where they need an extra big guy to line up on the line of scrimmage, I think that shows how much this coaching staff trusts him. It's not to say that they would just willingly plug him in at right tackle all willy-nilly, right. But yeah, I think he has promise, and he can do a sufficient job if Jackson can go. And I think on the flip side of that, with Ronnie Harrison, if he can't go, you got a veteran guy in Maurice Smith. You know, that's a little bit of a security blanket in that regard.
Next safety in, I guess, though, if you get beyond Eddie Jackson and Geno Matthias Smith, brings Jabril Washington back into the mix, right? I mean, that's who we saw against Tennessee, and Maurice Smith has bounced a little bit, but he's been mostly a corner, I guess, this year. And you're right about the dime position. I think you can feel pretty good about him, especially in a game like this where tackling is going to be at a premium, because even if they're in dime, that doesn't necessarily mean the ball isn't going to number 7.
Right.
It may actually encourage them to run the football if you've got dime out there. So that'll be interesting to see how it plays out from a depth standpoint. This team in general, you sensing a refreshed sort of mindset? Can you tell? Is it going to be until Saturday night when we really find out?
Yeah, I mean, they seem to be pretty focused. You know, we've talked to a few players this week and just seen them on the practice field. You know, they're not, I wouldn't say they have just a pep in their step about anything, but I don't think that's necessarily what you want to see. I think they seem to be pretty locked in and focused on the task at hand. I mean, we saw briefly, until it was taken down, that video of them reacting to the playoff ranking. They seem to be pretty happy about that. So they have a little bit of fire and know what lies ahead of them. But in terms of just, I guess, overreacting for this game, I haven't seen much of that.
Speaking of the college football poll or the rankings, playoff rankings, pretty interesting Tuesday night, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I thought they would be in the top 6, maybe that number 6 spot, but the number 4 ranking, I had to definitely go back and hit the backspace key a little bit. I didn't expect
the entertainment was priceless.
Oh, yeah.
On social media, just the hurt, it was unbelievable. But I was surprised. You know, I can't sit here and tell you that I think that they are definitely a top 4 team right now, and it doesn't really matter.
Right.
I mean, we've got a long way to go. 2 teams are probably going to take care of themselves Saturday night right here in Tuscaloosa, although Alabama wins a close game. What if LSU doesn't fall out of like the top 6?
I mean, that's a big possibility. I mean,
nuclear fallout.
you've seen these Big 12 teams. They haven't really played anybody up to this date. They got a backloaded schedule, and they have to kill each other. They have to kill each other off. But I think that's reflected highly in the committee's eyes, and I don't think that's a question. If it's a close game, which it probably will be, and say Alabama sneaks away with a win, I don't see LSU falling that far.
The entertainment's what it's all about right now.
Yeah.
It's nothing to take overly seriously, but from an entertainment value, that was as good of a release as I think we've had in the little over a year that they've been doing this. So it'll be fun to watch, see how it plays out. But obviously, bigger business to tend to this weekend. What kind of game do you see playing out between these two? Is it more of the grinder that we've seen in most years, you think, or maybe some more points?
I mean, I think it's still a low-scoring affair. I think, though, both defenses kind of counterbalance each other's rushing attacks. I don't see Leonard Fournette or Derrick Henry just having monster games. And I think they're capable of that, but I think the defenses are good enough to hold those guys in check. I think they're going to get theirs. I mean, they're two talented backs that are capable of doing that. But I think at the end of the day, it comes down to quarterbacks. Can Jake Coker, put together some magic at home, which he's played okay at home, but he's been known to turn the football over. And on the flip side of that is Brandon Harris, who hasn't seen a defense like Alabama's, who hasn't really played that much on the road. How is he going to react to this environment? I think those are two really big things to keep an eye on.
I think it really is. I think yards per carry will be interesting to watch for Fournette and Henry. Can either one of those guys get north of 5? They're used to doing that, especially Fournette. And as you said about the quarterbacks, and for me, can Ardarius Stewart continue to be that factor in the passing game that he was against Tennessee? Because if he can, I think that opens up a lot more for not just the passing game, but the offense in general. Now it's another guy you have to account for. We know he's a good blocker, but we saw the production that we were waiting on against Tennessee. Can he follow it up and give them that balance kind of in the passing game that they really didn't have before the Tennessee game?
Yeah, I mean, I think they have to have the number 2 in this situation. Calvin Ridley is obviously the number 1. And I think Ardarius can do that. I think you might want to look toward O.J. Howard, though.
Yeah.
If you look back at his career at Alabama, he's put together really big games.
His signature play is against LSU
as a freshman
2 years ago. Yeah.
And then in overtime last year, you saw when Blake Sims needed to get first downs, he was well, not only that, but he was throwing it to O.J. Howard in the outs. I think he had 2 receptions on just the last drive of regulation. So I think you have options. I think they're going to try to shut down one of those receivers. And I think Howard, if you're going to try to load the box and stop Henry, Howard's the guy that you look for. I mean,
Florida had success with a tight end 2 weeks ago. 7 catches for Florida's tight ends in that game, 2 touchdowns.
Right.
O.J. Howard hadn't had a touchdown catch in almost 2 full seasons now. So, it's kind of time for 88 to get back into the end zone. I'm with you. I think it's your typical LSU-Alabama game. This is what happens when this much talent gets on the field together and they mimic each other in terms of what they do. They're not differentiated by a system. They're both pro-style offenses. They're both similar in what they do defensively. It's almost like watching an Alabama spring game. It's the way I kind of define it in terms of talent, scheme, everything else. So I think Alabama wins a close one. What do you think?
I mean, I think so too. I think it'll come down to the quarterback play, and then I think special teams. I think this is a rare opportunity for Alabama to actually have the upper hand in that area because Adam Griffith and J.K. Scott have, really came on of late. The coverage units have improved, and that hasn't been the case for LSU. I mean, they have a strong kicker, but outside of that, it's an off year for them in that area. So I think those upper hands and it being at home, even though that hasn't mattered before, I think that gives Alabama a little bit of push in this game.
Yeah, and it's a great point about special teams because even in last year's game, they were big. Adam Griffith, for whatever you think, hit a big field goal. Hit 2 big field goals in that game, and especially the one that sent it to overtime. J.K. Scott averaged about 49 a punt in Baton Rouge. And the play that gets overlooked in that whole game last year is the kickoff out of bounds prior to Alabama's drive to go down and tie the game.
Right.
That was huge, and Alabama got the win in special teams. Ended up getting the win in the game. So for Charlie Potter, I'm Travis Reier. Keep it right here on BamaOnline.com for more coverage of Crimson Tide athletics.